Um, cool. Okay, there's some of the students that are struggling to connect. So I think we can continue, and then afterwards I will also again share the presentation and the links to our WhatsApp group. So I will definitely share that. Um, so if you drop off because of connectivity and those kind of things, don't worry. The session is recorded, and I fully understand. There is a few students that are struggling with the connections and those kind of things. Then I'm gonna put in, so the WhatsApp group, there is the number, but I'm also just gonna put in the link. So if anybody else wants to join the group, please do so. I'm gonna just copy the link into the chat as well. So if you want to join it from a chat, it is there. If you want to send me a WhatsApp, you can do so on 0837908387. Okay, so last time we started with the evaluation of cash flows, and we looked at nearly the 4 ways to look at capital budgeting. So we looked at the payback method, the average rate of return, the internal rate of return, and net present value. We worked through a few examples. What I'm also going to do is, after the session, I will also share the presentation with you. Then we also looked at a net present value. We started to look at the profitability index. We again looked at some of the previous examples, and we stopped nearly with about 2 exercises to go. So I thought, okay, let's tonight, let's just round that off so that we can finish the study unit 6, and then we can start with study unit 7 as well. So again, if you guys are struggling with connection and you're falling off, don't worry. I will be putting the recording onto WhatsApp again later this evening. Okay, so one of the questions that I picked up from a previous exam paper was this one, and in here they've asked you, and you can see we're looking at 2 questions again. So question 10 and 11 is based on the same information, and in this information they tell us, okay, that this person invests 10,000 in a herb shop. Cash flows for the next 5 years are 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, and 6,000. Okay, so originally 10,000, and then cash flows was 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, not 4,000, 5,000, and 6,000. So the 2 things that they've asked us around this set of information in question 10, they ask us if a capital cost equals to 15%, what will the net present value equal to? And then in this, the second question, they ask us a profitability index. So both of them you are going to use the information. So what would you have done in this instance to work out if that was a capital cost? Um, how would you have worked out what your present value will be equal to? And just think about it, write it down a bit. Don't need to go into, sorry, you don't need to go into too much detail. We will now cover it in any case. So just jot down a few thoughts what you would have done if you were now sitting in the exam and needed to do this. Okay, so you can see when we go back to the net present formula, where was that? So that we need to basically, for each of these cash flow streams, we will need to work out each of them, and then for how long you have them, and what the net present value of each of them will be. So for that first one, the 1,000 rand, we will divide it by 1 plus the 15%. There is a 1, but to make it to a power of 1 doesn't really do anything to the equation, but I like to add it there just so that one really remember the flow of what is needed. Because the next one, because the 15% stays the same, the next one will just be to a power of 2. And then, as you see, we'll do a 4,000 to a power of 3, the 1,000 to a power of 4, the 6,000 to a power of 5. Calculate all of them and subtract the beginning amount, the 10,000. Okay, so your net present value would then have been the 853,74. You can also, some of the calculators, you can import the data. So on the HP HP10P2, there is a net present value function. So the orange button, and then there's a net present value. So you can use that. The Sharp also, I think, have it. I just can't remember exactly but your Sharp calculator also have it. So you can, if you don't want to follow the root of a formula, you can use your HP or your Sharp to also capture the information. I think what is important when we have the 15% that's not changing, then it is actually very nice to do it on your calculator, because it then automatically remembers the 15 and you can just move along the net present values. Things that you need to remember with the calculator as well is, here they've told us it's year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So then it's a very nice flow, again, if you use the calculator. So if one of those years are not, if there isn't money coming in or there's no flows, then just remember on your calculator as well that if there's a year missing, you need to nearly say that that year is is 0. Just for the calculator to know that you're actually still using 5 years, because else if you just continue and putting in 1,000 and then 4,000, then 5,000, then 6,000, the calculator will only see it as 4 years. So please remember, if there is in any of these calculations a value that is equal to 0, just remember that you also need to add that in the data stream nearly of your calculator. Okay, so the net present value is actually a very easy function, but there's a lot of calculation. So again, if I look at something like this, there is easy ways that you can make mistakes. So the one thing that I also normally do is try to keep, while you calculating the separate numbers, try to keep as most as possible nearly decimals in there, and only start rounding it off when you get to nearly your final answers. But saying that they will not have an answer that is 853,74, and then an answer that is 853,53, because we now have rounded it off. So at least they won't do anything like that. So you don't need to worry that if you've rounded off, you will now suddenly get a different option to choose. The possibility is just that you will be off by 10 or 15 or 20 cents. And obviously that puts doubt sometimes in one's mind, but it will not be that suddenly because you rounded off, and you can see all these numbers are also very big and far between. So it will not be because of rounding that you suddenly select another option. Okay, then the question that followed on this question was a question on probability index. So this is also one of the indexes in study unit 6 that you need to know how to calculate. So your probability index, and they nearly tell us that the formula is the outlays plus the net present value divided by the outlays. So we have from the previous one, we had the outlays. So that was the 10,000, because that was the money that was put in at the beginning. The problem with questions like these, and that is my big concern always with questions that as follow-up questions, is that if we had that one wrong, the net present value in the previous question, unfortunately we will have this question wrong as well. And that nearly for me is always a big concern when there's follow-up questions in any, even in the assignments, but also in your exam papers, when suddenly it does make a big difference, because now suddenly you can lose even up to two questions, and probably around 4 or 8 points that you can suddenly lose out of it. And again, that's not for me very, very cool if I do that, but there's at least not always a lot of these. I just now tested. So if one of your answers, and let's say it was a 4574.03 plus 10,000 divided by, so at least none of those, if you used any of those numbers, none of them was actually coming through into this calculation. So luckily, what will happen is, doesn't matter which one of those you actually pick, your answer will be around between 1 and 1.5. So then again, one can at least probably go for this option in any case. So if you used any of these four answers, you will never get close to the 8. You will get between 1 and 1.5. So it can then at least identify that somewhere there was a mistake. Okay, so that's probability index. That's also your net present value. Then there's this thing called modified internal rate of return. What is nice, and again, I think you guys need to find out if you're allowed to use Excel, then there is actually a very nice function in Excel that does it. So there is that MER function in Excel. So if not, the thing that we always just need to know is that we will need to calculate your positive cash flows, which will be your first part of that formula. We will need to divide it by your negative cash flows, and we will then determine on how long the time period is, need to say 1 divided by the time period, and then to round off that formula, we will need to say -1. Okay, so that is, but if you guys are allowed to use Excel, let me quickly show you how nice it is in Excel. So I will make it a bit bigger as well, that we can see. Okay, so if we're working in Excel, so remember when we worked out that first one, answer was 20.81. So now let's look at the function where it tells us that we need to put in the values. It tells us that we need to put in the interest rate. So let's say that was the interest rate. And let's see, what does it also ask? Returns for interest rate of return. So let's just do that. We obviously need okay, so let's just quickly see, did they tell us in there what was the interest rate? So they told us it was 18%, and they told us it was 15% for the other one. So let's quickly, I should have done this better. was, what was it, 18% and 15%. Let's just quickly check. And obviously it needs to be numbers and not okay, so 20.81, 20.81. So and that's the nice thing about specifically this formula in Excel. You don't need to go and change anything nearly. You can just use it and apply the information. So let's again do it for the second example. We'll just get all the exact values as well and percentages. It was 16% and 19%. So 16 and 19. Also just want to make sure that that is correct and it picks up all the numbers, because okay, so sorry, I'm coughing. So we were now able to show on Excel also how to calculate the MER. So again, when you're practicing, you can use both. So you can use your calculator. Your calculator also got that function. So you put in your positive cash flows, your negative cash flows. You will be able to calculate it in Excel, and I will share the spreadsheet also with you guys on the WhatsApp chat tonight, because here we can also then see how easy it is actually to do the MER in Excel. So yes, we've got the formula included, but there is other ways for you to also look at it, and especially if you sit with a lot of information, when it's 2 or 3, then it's normally quite easy, and takes not that long. But imagine again, here you're sitting with seven time periods, so you would have needed to make nearly 7 calculations with that. You would have needed to then still do another calculation. So the margin error does come in, that one can make mistake. Okay, and that was the last one for study unit 6. I just quickly want to do again the things that's important for you guys out of study unit 6, and you will definitely get 2 or 3 of these in the exam. So the easier ones is the payback method and your average rate of return. Then the ones that they normally ask a lot is internal rate of return, your net present value, and then linked to the net present value, the profitability index. So So those last three nearly very important, and sometimes they do like to include the modified internal rate of return. So normally you will get two or three of those in the exam. Okay, I will share this as well with you guys, the presentation. So the other thing, obviously, so let's just continue with study unit 7. So we'll continue with that, and what we don't finish tonight, we will just finish next Friday, and then we have enough time still to do a lot of prep work for your exam. I still got your exam as the 8th of November, so just if it has changed or it's a different date, just put it in the chat, but I still have it as the 8th of November, so it does give us some time unless it has changed. Okay, study unit 7. So study unit 7, we will look at bonds and debentures, or how you want to pronounce it. It's always one of those that I struggle with. Then within it, we basically gonna look at mechanisms how to do pricing with that. So we're gonna look at some money market instruments. We're gonna look at bonds. There's gonna be things that comes into play, like they're gonna talk about face value. We're gonna see nominal values. There's things that we're gonna talk about: maturity dates, coupon, interest rates, interest dates. Linked to that, nearly, there's going to be things that they will say about settlement date, yield to maturity. Then there's things of all-in price, X interest, cum interest. So there's all these kind of things, and all of them have different ways how they influence bonds. So, and I think what is important about bonds also is, and depending on how much you guys listen to the financial markets and those kind of things, so you get government bonds that need to be running or expected to to give certain yields. There's other kind of bonds that one can also invest in. So it's, in a sense, supposed to be a very nice investment mechanism, that is also supposed to be a bit more stable than other things because of certain criteria that are linked to some of the bonds. But let's go a bit into some of the detail. So what we will see, and this is a bit more just for background. Again, it's very difficult in your subject, the DSC1630, to nearly ask these things in definitions or certain things like that because of the online environment. But if I ask some of it, at least you have the information. But the things around bonds is that Normally, and that is why again also some people love to put their investments into bonds, because it is supposed to be a fixed interest rate that you will receive after a certain period of years, and when it will mature. So that is normally why people would invest in, because it's normally a bit higher than what your banks or in your insurance companies will give you, because it's normally also linked to government bonds, so that that would normally have been in when government does expansion in construction or those kind of things. So normally the bonds can be at a bit of a higher interest rate that you get back. But the thing around it is you probably going to lose money if you take it out earlier than what it's supposed to do. Okay, so then the other thing around the bond is that, and you would have seen that in your assignments already, that they talk about the face value of a bond. Then they will talk about the maturity date. So that is the date when the bond will be repaid. So that might be, if they ever ask a definition question, it might be on something like maturity date. That color does not really work. And coupon date. So they might even give you a few statements and say which one is correct or which one is incorrect. So that you know that maturity date is a date when the bond will be repaid. The coupon rate is the rate of interest that the bond pays on the face value. And then the other thing that they talk about a lot is, what will normally happen is that you will there will be twice per year nearly payments happening. So there's normally talk about two interest dates in the year on which the coupon will be paid. So you will, most of the time, they will tell you it's half yearly or twice a year. But also, if I don't mention it, the one important thing to remember is that it's nearly a standard that it's been done twice a year. So I think that is nearly important, is even if I don't always mention it, it nearly needs to be present with you guys, that when we do the bonds and when we need to analyze it, if I don't tell you twice a year, they normally will, but they might, and I'll show you now an exercise how I normally will tell you. So they would have it nearly next to the coupon rate. They will say half yearly. So very seldom do they say in any of the words that goes with it that your coupon rate is half yearly. But they will always nearly put it in brackets next to the coupon rate. So and you guys, I think you already needed to do some of this for assignment, if I'm not mistaken. So you would probably have done it already in your assignments. When we look at how to calculate this, there's always, and that's why I wrote it here at the top, that there's always three calculations that we need to do. So the first thing is there's going to be a redemption value received at maturity. So that's one calculation that we need to do. Then there's this periodic coupon payments that will happen. So that's a second thing that we need to calculate. And then the third one is the interest that will be generated by the reinvestment of a coupon payment. So when that payment is paid out every 6 months, that actually goes back into reinvestment. So once again, when we look at bonds and let's say that bond pays out half yearly, if it, and I'm just now making up a number, so if it is being paid half yearly 1,000 rand, after every payment that happens, that will be reinvested. So you will get again interest on that reinvestment, and that is nearly this third component that you also will need to calculate. Okay, so basically the easiest for me always to remember this is, in this process you're going to do three calculations. So you're going to look at the redemption value of a maturity. You're going to look at the periodic coupon payment, and then the last one is you're going to look at the reinvestment. And I think let's look at an example of that. So, and that is why I nearly wanted to split it in those three. So what they, and let's just look at some of the information. So they tell us what the nominal value is. They tell us the coupon rate half yearly is 15%. So again, half yearly is in brackets. They tell us the interest rate dates. They tell us the maturity date, and they tell us what the settlement date is. And then they told us with the interest rate of 15%. Okay, so basically then what we need to do is you need to calculate what is on that 15th of September, what is that payment going to be, or what is he going to receive. So that is in a sense straightforward. So it is the 1 million, which is the nominal value, times the 13%. And remember, half yearly, so it's divided by 2. So if we didn't divide by 2, you would have gotten, I think, 150,000, which is your yearly rate nearly, or what you will receive on a yearly basis. But remember, half yearly, so we need to divide by 2. So we will get 65,000 on that 15th of September. Okay, so that will be your first coupon, would be that 65,000. Your second one is on the 15th of March, again 65,000. So it is again that same basically amount times the 13% divided by 2. So your second coupon will also be 65,000. The only difference will come in on how many months or half years is it getting interest for. So So that's nearly the biggest thing that will change between the two. And then the last one is that we will need to work out the nominal value. So the nominal value is on the 1 million. Again, depending on what your interest rate is, they told us it is 15%. So for all three of them, we use the 15%. Your nominal rate is in line with the last one, so the 15th of March. So both the last two will be to the power of -2, so that is 2.5 years. And the first one will be just 1.5 year. So you will now need to calculate that value plus that value plus that value to get the price of this bond that we are looking at. Okay, so, and normally what will happen is, and you can check that with the, and I'll share more exercises with you guys on this as well, but you will always see that the value of your bond is less than the nominal value. So if you have made a calculation and this answer is suddenly 1,002,000 and something, then it needs to nearly ring a bell that somewhere in this calculation probably made a mistake, and then it might just be that instead of the -1, you could have said 1. So instead of nearly working backwards, you could have had these may be wrong. So just make sure that whenever you work with this, your price in the end will always be smaller than your nominal value that you started off with. Okay, so that is nearly just a way of nearly making a note for yourself. Okay, so what I've included also is another example. So again, nearly just again, you don't need to work it out. Just nearly jot down things that you would probably have done to work this out. So they told us in the data what the interest rate was also. So just look at it and nearly see what would you have done in this instance. Okay, so there's a few things that I would already, so out of it I could see that, okay, my nominal was for 1 million. Again, so we're first going to look at that coupon. And as always, divided by a half because it's half yearly. So that would have given me, what is it, 46. Let's quickly see. million times 9.25% divided by 2. So that gives me 46,250. Okay, so now a bit of a difference between the previous one. Here we had settlement date 2013, maturity date a year later. So that's why we only had the 6 months and the 12 months. So the 1 half year and the second half year. Here we're sitting with settlement date 2011, maturity date 2027. So that is 16 years difference. So 16 times 2 is 32 half years. But not just 52 half years, that is 20 June, that's 51. So there's still 1 extra half year that we need to also work with. So we are actually sitting with 33 half years. So what we will need to do in this instance is nearly saying, well, okay, we've got the 46,000. We will need to use that. We will look at the 2 periods per year. So and it should be 16.5, which gives me 33 half years that we're gonna work with. And then the yield to maturity is 15.9 interest rate. Hopefully we can then work out a future value nearly for that. So again, let me quickly show you what we would have done. So we would have used the 46,000. We would have used the 33 periods. Remember the interest rate of 15.9. So then we will get a present value of 535,159. I've got 7,882, but obviously rounded off, it is 79. So what I included in my HP was, I said, okay, just to make sure that anything else, I didn't make a mistake with a previous question that had a future value in it. So I just make future value 0, then 46,250 would be my PMT. Let's just write that over. I wanted to write MPT, which does not make sense at all. So that is my PMT. You would have had to just say twice per year. Again, a lot of the default on your calculators is 12 times a year. So when you specifically work with bonds, remember to change it to 2 times per year. Then what I normally do is I add the 16.5% as N, so that I can get a total of 33 periods. And then your PM, your present value would have been equal to your 535,159. So that is how one would have have calculated this. Okay, so then you have your present value component. Then, as we did with the previous one, we will need to work with that face value. The face value, you will again just be careful with what interest rate you're using. So with a face value, again, remember that we use the 15.9 divided by 2, which will give you the 0.0795. Again, remember it is for 33 periods. So just make sure once again that you included that extra half period to the calculation as well, because it might be that if you don't do that, your last it can be that you get one of your answers that might be incorrect because of the 33 versus the 32. So just be very careful that, again, remember to use the 33 half yearly periods. Then out of that present value of a 10 over 1 million, it is equal to just over 80,000. And then, as the previous question, to get to the current price, we will add the two components to get to the 615. Okay, so I think this is important nearly in the sense of how you work out the price of a bond, so that again, you must just be very careful with two things, nearly the what interest rate you're going to use. So for the first one, we use the interest rate of a 9.25. Then the other important thing to note is this, how many half years there is going to be, so that you remember that up until the 30 June 2027, that is 32 half years, but then there is 1 half year added to the 20 to get to the December one. Okay, so that gives you your 33 half years. So important nearly to remember that half year extra. Sometimes one forget in the calculations. Okay, so yeah, I see most of you guys have dropped off, so I know there is connectivity issues at the moment across areas. I got that message from a few guys in this morning that was struggling also to get onto some of the My UNISA platforms. So okay, so let's quickly. I think what the other thing that is really important that we need to look at, and I think this is when we start working with some other numbers. So where your first two was your maturity settlement date was nearly on the same day, or the date was very similar. Now what will happen in the all-in price is that, and the same with accrued interest and clean price. Now we also need to nearly work back some of the days, and that again we used when was it? In study unit 2 or 3. In the back of the study guide, there is also the table that you can use to 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 count days. So again, with this one, very important how are we going to use that in the instance here to count days. So again, I think this is one of those things that you just be very, very careful when we do this to count the days. So we talked about here your settlement date of 24 May, and your maturity date is 15 July. So you need to basically work out how many days are between 24 May to 15 July. So on your tables, or in the table, the 15 July will be day 196. 24 May will be day 144. So if you subtract those two, you get 52 days. Okay, so that is important for nearly, if we look at that piece, that between 24 May and 15 July. So that is 52 days. Okay, so then the other thing that is important from the formula that we're going to use is that we look at this number H. H refers to if you look at half year. So, and it depends on what we are looking at. It can be anything between 181 to 284 days. So it again is very important when we look at some of these calculations, so that you exactly know which ones to use. But so for that price at settlement, remember again, we would have now calculated it, but the important thing is this time period that you add. So it is again this component that you basically adding to the situation. So again, very important that one small component. So again, because we're working backwards, it's to the power of negative. So again, when you face with options in the exam, that will be making it less. So your original that you calculated was 90, so the 90,09. So now that you nearly going backwards, it needs to be less. Okay, so again, there's now no other options or anything like there would be in your exam or in the assignments, but you would now add 4 options or 5 options, and most likely some of them will be more than 90. Then those ones you can actually already eliminate, because it must be less than what you worked out. Okay. The other thing that we will also look at, and that is also important for this part where we look at accrued interest and clean price. And way at the beginning, we talked about cum interest and X interest. So what this does is, again, if you have different periods that you need to work out with, you will need to, so if they say in a question, and I don't have, I will actually, for the next one, I will add a question to this on both cum and X, so that we can just look at how you need to then also bring that component in. But basically what you're going to do is, with both of them, you bringing in that accrued interest component. Again, you would have worked with differences of a half year or between two periods. So again, we will use the counting of days to get you a R value. They don't normally give it to you, so we will need to work that out. And then also we will need to work out the H, so the number of days in the half year. But that also one can do with your counting of days. So if you know which two dates it is in that half year, you will be able to work it out. The same as we had here, we would have worked out the 181 because the two dates that was given to us, the 15th July was 196, and the 15th of January obviously was 15. So that half year comprised of a 181 days. If, again, depending on what days, so the reason why this was not 184 is most likely because February only had 28 days, so we lost 3 days, which would, so if we were a half year, if it was 15 March to 15 September, then probably we would have had 184 and not 181. Okay, so it's most likely linked to the smaller number of 181 is linked to the February month that is shorter than all the other months. Okay, so if February is not included in that half year period, then you're normally looking at 184 or 183 as your half year. So again, when we look at the accrued interest, the cum interest, the X interest, we will work out that half year, how many days it is, by looking at the table and work it out. We will also look at the R, so that we can look at the settlement date of and until the coupon date. So that again will give us that. So we will be able to work that out. Okay, then just things that I included for extra reference and extra notes. So and it nearly comes into when you guys look at certain things. So if your yield to maturity is bigger than your coupon rate, your all-in price will be less than 100. If your yield to maturity is smaller than the coupon rate, your all-in price will be bigger than 100%. So again, those two is very important, nearly to guide you in the options that you will get with the question, because normally it will be 2 of each nearly in your answer set. And that is just normally how it is presented in the assignments and in the exam. So just from that point of view, just be on the lookout for that. Very seldom, if ever, that your yield to maturity and your coupon rate will be the same. If it is, then your all-in price is 100%. So then you actually don't need to work out anything. So very, very seldom, unless they want to nearly try to catch you out. But I have not seen a question where the yield to maturity and your coupon rate is exactly the same. Yeah, if it is somewhere in a paper, it was to catch you out, because your answer will be whatever. Yeah, so it will not really have the influence. So it might be that they ask it in an assignment to test, but then you guys probably would have had it already. Okay, so next week we will start looking at the handling of data. So we will focus on the handling of data, how to look and how to calculate means, standard deviation, variances. Also looking at different types of your regression lines. So if we have a linear function, we look at the slope, we look at the intercept, we will look at correlations. So if you have a regression line with a scatter diagram, we will look at the correlations between those points. And then also when we need to calculate the correlation, and to say if things are highly correlated, positive correlated, negative correlated, weak, strong correlated. We'll get to all of that, but that then is we will look at the correlation coefficient, which is normally R, to look at that, or the other measurement is the coefficient of determination, which is just R square. So that we will look at next week, but it's nearly a lot to do with your linear regression and other statistics around that. Okay, so next week we will focus on chapter 8, and then the week after we will start doing prep work for the exam. So your prep work, we will just work out exam papers. So if you have exam papers that you want to share with me, please do. You can share it on our WhatsApp group, or you can email it to me as well. So, and any one of these free email addresses you can actually use and email some of, if you have old papers that we want to work through. Okay, so that is it for tonight. I will share the presentations and the recording on the group as well. Okay, have a good evening, everyone, and see you again next week.